to be at Wise Guys Comedy Club in Vegas this weekend. So she's going to be coming in hour number 2. And I've been wanting to talk to the UNLV athletic director, Eric Harper, for quite some time now after he hired a new UNLV football coach in Barry Odom, who's actually going to be joining us on the show tomorrow. UNLV athletic director, Eric Harper, will be joining us a little bit later on the show. Now, it's been a little while since we had this guy in studio. Of course, you know him as the former DA here in Las Vegas. Thomas Moskal joining us in studio right now to give some legal expertise on some big news stories that broke out over the course of the last few days. Thomas, it is good to see you, my friend. It's been a little while. People have been asking me, where's Thomas? Where's Thomas? Here you are.
Who's been asking you?
Some friends of the show. Where's Thomas? How come he hasn't been in studio? Here you are.
I've just been busy. I've been busy keeping people out of jail. It's Christmas, man. We don't need people in jail paying high fines.
Well, you're doing a great job representing Donald Trump and keeping him out of jail. I just wanted to praise you for that. You're doing a wonderful job.
I'm still waiting to get paid, though.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that strange? I thought he had money. But
maybe he'll file for bankruptcy like Alex Jones. I don't know. Maybe he will. Anyway, Thomas, good to see you. I'm glad you're here, and we got a lot to talk about, some serious topics to get to. I want to share a COVID story real quickly before we get to some news. And a friend of mine who's a host here in Las Vegas, I was talking to her yesterday, lady maybe in her 50s, and she got COVID a year ago. And I haven't talked to her recently, and she said she's had some horrible long COVID, I guess they're calling it now, where there's articles and people are, struggling even months, even years after getting COVID. And she is really struggling. So I just wanted to put my thoughts and prayers out to her and her family. She's not doing very well, and she got COVID a year ago. And I want people to understand, because I'm someone who almost died of COVID. And I just want to say there are a lot of people out there that are still struggling with the after effects of COVID. A lot of people don't understand that, and we need to think about that. And I think it's really important. And I don't even want to get into the Ron DeSantis stuff, him going after the CDC, people going after Dr. Fauci, people saying that the vaccines kill millions of people, which is obviously not true. I'm not going to go into that. All I just want to say is we need to think about there are a lot of people in this country that are still suffering. There are people that are still getting COVID and suffering, and there are people that are dealing with the long COVID after effects of COVID. And my heart goes out to them. I just wanted to say that because I had a very difficult conversation with a friend of mine. And we need to think about that before we start going after doctors and nurses and Dr. Fauci and all that stuff. That's all I ask. Anyway, this is a story that broke out, Thomas, a few days ago. Chris Beard was the UNLV head basketball coach for about a week. Then he jumped ship. I've heard rumors about him that he likes to drink. Not the nicest guy in the world, but he is pretty darn good basketball coach. In the grand scheme of life, that doesn't matter. I understand that. Texas, good basketball team. And a couple of days ago, we learned that Chris Beard was arrested in the middle of the night for allegedly assaulting his fiance. More stories in third degree. I believe he was charged, made bail $10,000. And now we're learning that it was the fiance that claimed that he was throwing her around the room, that she had bruises on her legs, that he tried to strangle her for at least 5 seconds, cutting off breathing circulation. These are very, very serious allegations. What are your thoughts when you first heard this story, and is Chris Beard in a lot of trouble?
Well, it's a domestic violence situation. I've seen a lot of it. I mean, couples get into heated arguments. When I first saw the story, it makes complete sense. The problem is with him, it's a serious offense because he's being charged with a felony. It's a third-degree felony down there in Texas, and the same thing applies here in Vegas and a lot of states. Once you cut off air circulation, according to the report, he threw that arm in front of her, kind of like got behind her and squeezed. Once you impede any air, automatically becomes a felony. And the big issue is the dirty little secret in prosecution of domestic violence is most of these cases are not prosecuted to the fullest extent.
Right.
Most felony strangulation cases are dealt down to misdemeanors. But Chris Beard's problem is, look, he's a high-profile figure. And whenever you're in the news and the media is following it, well, the DA's office and the prosecutors are going to be a little leery of just dealing the case down because now the media is going to be questioning it. When I read in the reports, there was also bite marks on her. And one thing that Chris Beard did is when he talked to police, he said, well, I've got video of the recording of the whole thing that shows that basically he wasn't at fault. Maybe it was self-defense. And the police go, well, would you share the video with us? And he says, no. Well, now that he's told the police that the video exists, they're going to be able to get it, right? And
do you think he's telling the truth?
They probably had surveillance inside their house. I don't know why he would say that unless, look, a lot of defendants do that. They go, I have video exonerating me. I have clients that
Oh, that's bad.
have given video over to the police thinking it exonerates
They probably
them.
would have tried to get that video anyway, even if he didn't say anything. But now they know that there's a video out there. He's in trouble.
Well, a lot of times the police don't do that follow-up on a case like this, but because it's high profile, they might have taken that extra step to go to the house to try and get that surveillance video. So yeah, it's probationable. If he got prosecuted to the fullest extent and got convicted of this 3rd-degree felony, assault, family violence by strangulation, it could be 2 to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
But you could also get probation. But a lot of these things do get dealt down. His case is just going to be heavily scrutinized because of who he is.
Do you believe that there will be a time where any of that video could be released to the public?
That's interesting. I mean, we know that Texas has some pretty strict laws about releasing those kind of videos, but we don't even know if the police got the surveillance. We just know Chris Beard said it existed, right? And so I would doubt that we'd ever actually get the surveillance from within the house.
So knowing what you know, let me ask you this. We've heard rumors and a statement made by his attorney saying that the person who he allegedly assaulted doesn't want to press charges. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. Obviously, his attorney is going to say anything and everything for the client. If that is true, and I don't know if it is, but if his fiance, who he allegedly assaulted, says, I don't want to press charges, does it matter at this point?
It definitely matters. And prosecutors that prosecute family violence and domestic violence, they're used to that. I mean, the girlfriends, the wives, the family members, they never want to press charges after the fact, but they called 911 like she did because they were scared at the time. Now, the decision is not going to be in her hands. But in Texas, they actually have these things called affidavits of non-prosecution. So she would probably sign an affidavit under oath and say, I don't want him prosecuted. And they have to be really carefully worded to not, reaffirm what happened that night, but I don't want him prosecuted. And when you give that over to a prosecutor, basically they start having some proof issues on their case because they're going, well, our key witness, probably the only witness, is now giving either a conflicting statement or says, I don't want to prosecute. The biggest deal is when you're a prosecutor, you're always worried about 2 things. Is the investigator who put all the time and effort in the case going to be mad that you dealt the case down, or is the victim going to be mad? And when you get that affidavit of non-prosecution, that's something for you to slip in the file and go, the victim under oath said they didn't want to prosecute. It also gave me a heads up that if we go to trial, we're going to have some issues with this witness and with the testimony. And so it really gives the prosecutor cover to be able to deal the case down, which they're going to need because the media is covering this bad boy.
So what we know is that Chris Beard has officially been suspended without pay. And the University of Texas put out a general statement saying, yes, they're going to, and I'm paraphrasing here, they're going to follow the case closely. They don't tolerate any, this sort of crime if in fact he did commit it. I personally believe even if he gets probation, which is very possible, you might be right. I hope he doesn't if he's guilty, but he might. I'm not sure he ever coaches college basketball again. This is a very, very serious charge. And if there is video, if police do find the video, that'll obviously make it a lot worse for Chris Beard. I don't think he can claim self-defense here. I would assume, and let me ask you this question because I'm making an assumption, but with your legal expertise, do you believe if this woman is claiming she had bruises on her legs, do you believe that somebody took some pictures of the injuries?
That's proper police investigation. When you go to the scene of a domestic violence, even the smallest red mark that could be a scratch, bruising, yes, you're supposed to take photos of all of that. They should have had body camera on at the scene too to record everything that she's saying there, because these domestic violence victims tend to change their story when they hit the stand.
Right.
And so that's why body camera comes in handy nowadays, because you get to the scene when they're still in their emotional state. She's like, yeah, he choked me, put his arm behind me, smacked the glasses off my face. And what I heard, she actually has a bite mark on her arm. Now, that bite mark on the arm is interesting because, self-defense is an affirmative defense. You put it forward. It's not even an affirmative defense. The prosecutor has to prove it's not self-defense. And if she has a bite mark on her arm, that might show that maybe she was attacking him at some point, right? I mean, she's given her side of the story to the police. Who knows what really happened behind closed doors?
That changes a lot, and that's why they need to see the video. For example, if she did start the physical altercation first, and she's striking him in any way, you have a right to put your hands around somebody's neck, do you not? What is the law there?
There's not a strict black and white, you can put your hands around somebody's neck and choke them. I'm sure he's a lot bigger than her. I've never seen pictures of her, but I'm sure he's a lot bigger than her. He's a guy. To get in behind and start choking somebody out, it's probably not reasonable.
Even for 5 seconds, because that's what the report
it
says.
just all depends, right? Because self-defense is predicated on reasonableness.
Right.
What was reasonable for you to do to defend yourself? So if let's say you're a 6'6", linebacker, and there's a 5'1" female right there, how much force do you really need to apply to defend yourself? Right. Do you need to knock somebody out? Do you need to apply an arm bar and snap their arm? I mean, it's all like this spectrum.
I understand that, but
biting.
But we can all agree, if whoever started the physical confrontation first, that is a big point of emphasis. Got to be in this case, right? If she started physically assaulting him first, that changes a lot. I'm not going to excuse everything that Chris Beard did allegedly, but if he's the one who started the physical altercation first, anything involving self-defense or there was no weapon used, we know that throws everything out the window. Isn't that a huge point of emphasis, or should be in this case?
Well, in every self-defense case, who starts the altercation is a big factor in how it plays, because you can only escalate things so much if you're the one who started it.
Right.
The thing is, what she told police is this: she broke his glasses on purpose in an argument. He came in the bedroom mad about the glasses. He then smacked the glasses off of her face. They then got into an altercation. He grabbed her leg. He drug her off the bed, which was where the bruises came from, according to her. And then at some point, he bit her arm. She had the bite marks, according to the report. And then at some point, he got behind her and threw that little forearm behind her and choked her for a bitch, which is what escalated this to felony. Whenever you're dating somebody, or even your brother or sister, as soon as you choke, it only has to take a split second of them saying, yeah, I couldn't breathe for half a second. All of a sudden, this is worthy of being charged as a felony. Now, it all comes down to prosecutorial discretion here. What are they going to pursue? What kind of plea are they going to try and get out of this guy? And down in there in Texas, let's be real. He's the head basketball coach. The community's probably going to want him protected at some point. And so there's going to be a lot of backdoor politicking that goes on what's going to happen here. And you're right. His professional livelihood's at stake. He makes a lot of money. He's probably got high-powered attorneys down there that are very well connected.
Well, I'm going to make a prediction, Thomas.
I'd love to hear it.
And then I'm going to ask you for yours. But here's my prediction. Number one, and I'm not even talking about legally what's going to happen. I'm just saying in general terms. If one of two or both of these things happen, if a video is released, or if there are pictures that are released publicly, if TMZ, for example, gets their hands on a picture of a bite mark or bruised legs, if any of that stuff becomes public, I don't think he ever coaches college basketball again. Now, if all that stuff is sealed and it's never leaked, and never becomes public, he gets probation. I don't think he'll ever coach at Texas again, but I do think he will probably coach somewhere else, assuming that he's, slap on the wrist, misdemeanor. He'll probably coach basketball again somewhere. It's not going to happen anytime soon. It ain't going to happen at Texas. But I'm telling you right now, from a public's point of view, if those pictures are released of him, whether it was self-defense or not, sadly, bite marks and bruises that he did on his fiancée publicly, I don't think he'll ever coach college basketball again.
Now, I highly doubt it qualifies as legal self-defense. It's just going to be something for the defense attorney to kind of.
But you get my point, though.
Prosecutors.
You get my point. If it's a public situation where something is released, whether it be a bite mark or something, I think he's in a lot of trouble. I'm not even talking about the legal ramifications. As far as the legal ramifications, you're the expert, not me, but I'll give you my opinion on that. Is somebody trying to steal a car outside? I don't know what's going on out there. Maybe it's Chris Beard. Anyway, Chris Beard's trying to break into my car right now. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Allegedly,
he's trying to break into my car right now. There's bruises on my car. Anyway, so there it goes again. As far as the legal ramifications go, I don't think he's ever been arrested before. I don't think he has a police record. He's got a lot of money, which means you're going to get pretty good legal representation. There's no chance he's going to go to jail. Even if there is a video, I don't see any chance he's going to jail as a first-time offender, even though this is a very serious circumstance. So I believe he will probably get probation, and there'll probably be some sort of plea deal, and he will never go to jail. He'll admit to some wrongdoing, and that'll be the end of it. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, but this with this case, if I was his attorney, I'd go, any admission or even a plea to a lesser misdemeanor of domestic violence or even battery in this situation is gonna really shake out badly for him professionally, right? He's not just a normal person, like you said. He might not ever coach again. So you may want to actually press this case, because what happens in most domestic violence cases, I'm going to be real frank with you, is the girlfriend or wife doesn't show up to court. The case gets dismissed. They serve some kind of notice that they can re-indict the case if they need to. If the victim comes forward and says, "Oh, I meant to show up. I don't know why it got dismissed," but overwhelming majority of these cases get dismissed. And if she decided not to show up to court, she decided not to comply with the subpoena, the only way they would put this case on to prove it against him, they would have to get a warrant for her arrest, material witness warrant, arrest the victim in a case, bring her in. And as prosecutors, we usually only do that in really egregious cases when you have a very violent guy. And that is one way it could shake out to where his case does get dismissed. Out of all the cases in the criminal justice system, domestic violence is the one most likely to be dismissed by a prosecutor.
Interesting.
He could end up, given those issues, they could negotiate something where, look, he does like intense domestic violence counseling for 13 weeks, 16 weeks, a year long, and then it gets dismissed at the end if he does everything.
Was there anything in the police report or anything involving this case that you saw where alcohol was involved? Because I've heard rumors about Chris Beard that he likes to kick him back and drink. Was there anything like that in the report?
I don't recall seeing any of that in the report, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was predicated on alcohol.
Right.
It wouldn't.
Right.
So,
right. Well, how do you think this thing ends? What do you think happens here? If you had to give your best prediction, what do you think?
Look, if I was his attorney, we're going to let this thing drag out for a while. We're going to go through all the discovery, let the media kind of die down. And then I want to get in there with the DA of that city and somehow get a dismissal at the end of the case. He'll do whatever he needs to do. Community service, intense counseling, public apology, whatever he needs to do, and not have this on his record. And it's just a domestic violence arrest that was dismissed. And that puts him in the best position now professionally going forward. Right?
You think he ever coaches again?
Well, I'll leave that more to you. What's happening to these coaches that get accused of domestic violence?
Well, I'll tell you this.
Let me say this. I know the NFL, they don't care what goes on the criminal prosecution. They do their own independent investigation, right?
It's very inconsistent, but we're living in a different era now. Let me give you an example. And by the way, I don't want to compare what happened to my friend to Chris Beard and the possibility of putting your hands on a woman, because these are very different circumstances. But I'm going to give you a quick story. Personal friend of mine. He's the former national college basketball coach of the year when he was at Iowa State. I'm talking about my friend Larry Eustace, and I love him to death. He's like a second dad to me, and he's a great friend. So Larry, he's had some anger issues in the past. He's a foaming at the mouth type of coach. That's the word I would use.
Your voice went high.
Yeah, he kind of uses foul language from time to time. And when he was coaching at Colorado State, he used some foul language. Never put his hand on a player. Never showed up drunk or anything like that. Never anything close to that. Never alleged anything like that. But he did use verbal harassment, like many other coaches do, by the way. He called them the C word, in a horrible word describing a woman. He would call them that on the sidelines. He would verbally abuse them from time to time, which many coaches do, sadly. It is what it is. And Colorado State fired him because a couple parents complained to the athletic director. And this is Larry Eustace. This is a guy who has won everywhere. And he was fired. He was let go for a cause. So I'm going to tell you right now, if my friend gets fired for doing something like that, just verbally going after his players to try to motivate them or whatever the case may be, Chris Beard cannot be the head coach there anymore.
Let me push back a little bit and say, do you think there's a difference between how your friend, he's conducting himself like that towards players on the team and in his job, whereas there's a distinction here where what's happening with Chris Beard is in his personal life away from what's going on at work? There's a little bit of a distinction there, right?
There is a distinction, but you also represent the university. You represent the school. Whether it was on their dime and you were working or not, I don't think that should matter. I think your employer should have the right to make that decision because you're making the school look bad. If in fact you did put your hands on a woman and it wasn't self-defense, I don't know if it was or it wasn't. But certainly when you talk about the strangulation, that to me doesn't seem like self-defense. To me, it just seems like the guy went into. Here's what I think
you're safe saying that.
Yes.
It's not self-defense.
No.
Based on what
Here's
what
what I
we're
think
seeing.
happened. I think this guy got into a heated debate and argument. It was late in the evening. He might have been intoxicated. While that is not an excuse, he might not have. He's got anger issues. He obviously lost his mind and did something that you should never do. Put your hands on anybody, let alone a woman, no matter how angry you might be at them. Was she wrong if she, broke his glasses? Yeah, that's a really dumb
here's
thing
the thing
to do,
with domestic violence cases, and as prosecutors, we always keep this in mind. The time that they call the police and somebody shows up, this isn't the first time that there's been heated arguments and perhaps violence in the home. And that's why prosecutors go, that's why we take it a lot more serious in this country now. That's symptomatic of something that this guy may have a history of doing this. We just don't know about it.
Right. That's also very true.
But no prior 911 calls, no prior arrests. He doesn't have a history on paper of doing this. And so, hopefully he learns his lesson here.
And the grand scheme of things, whatever it says on your headstone, it's not about how good of a basketball coach you are. Yeah, we all know Chris Beard is a very good head basketball coach. It's about who you are as a person, family man, husband, father, whatever the case may be. In the end, when it's done, that's what people want to talk about, right? At least most people. What type of person were you? So I don't care how good of a basketball coach Chris Beard is. If he did what we think he did, it's absolutely despicable. And he needs to get help. And he needs to be criticized for a very, very long time. And he needs to do what is necessary to make sure this never happens again. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. All right, he's Thomas Moskal. He is the former DA here in Las Vegas. Good to have him in studio. We are going to talk about a very controversial case that involves body camera footage with an officer-involved shooting. One person is dead in this shooting. The person who died had an axe in his hand, but why was he shot in the head? It's a story that is now starting to pick up some speed in national news. Why? Because the body camera footage was just released. Here's the kicker. That officer that we are going to talk about is back on the streets as a police officer. We'll get Thomas Moskal's opinion on that. I'm Brian Shapiro. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limit right here.